topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart.
Hello and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yaxan. I am a diversity educator and a core alignment coach, which means I support agencies, organizations, and individuals in aligning their actions with their values so that they can develop new neural pathways that are far more inclusive than our conditioned patterns and create more belonging and welcoming for everyone. If you're interested in looking at samples of what I teach, you can go to my website, which is knowwhatyouvantcoaching.wordpress.com. I have a wonderful return guest today, someone I respect immensely, and her name is Sandy Holman. She's a systems change agent. And before I fully introduce her, I would really like to let you know she has been one of my sponsors. Thank you for that, also Sandy. And I want to mention that this program today and several more are brought to you by the City of Davis Arts and Cultural Affairs Program and the California Creative Corps, which is a pilot program funded by the City of Sacramento's Office of Arts and Culture and the California Arts Council, a state agency, as an engagement campaign designed to increase public awareness about issues of social justice, climate resiliency, and more. The Creative Corps program, backed by Governor Gavin Newsom and the state legislature, looks to increase public awareness on topics such as health and safety, water and energy conservation, climate mitigation, emergency preparedness, social justice, and civic and community engagement. Sandy, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to read your introduction while you come out, and you're an expert in this field, and I want people to hear a little bit more about your background. So Sandy Holman is just an expert and very wise and shares knowledge so generously. And today we'll be talking about, well, you made the title for this show, which is Real Conversations for Real Changes, Arts for Unity. And today you'll describe, one of the things we can talk about is how you describe from a broader point of view the role that arts, communication, and unity can play in healing and building healthier communities. Sandy is the founder of the Culture Co-op, which promotes systemic change, inclusion, equity, cultural competency, diversity, literacy, and equality education for all. She's a consultant, writer, activist, and documentarian on the lives of marginalized people. Sandy has authored several children's books, including We All Have a Heritage, Grandma Says Her Hair Has Flair, Grandpa Is Everything Black Bad. She produced a powerful documentary called The Cost of Darkness, and it's a film that identifies racial disparities and socio-political factors and the root causes. It's a very in-depth, very educational, tremendous piece of work. So, and you've done more than that.
Yeah, I think all of us have been doing a lot of work to try and make a difference in a variety of communities. Yes.
I want to delve into some of you've used several different forms of art in your social agent work, social change agents work. So, but I'd like to ask you what else you can tell us about the California Creative Corps initiatives and your perspective, and I know you people from different communities tap on your expertise. So I'd love to hear your broader perspective.
Well, first of all, I am always excited when our governmental entities, city entities, the Arts Council, all of those groups that were a part of this, see the value and the power that arts can have. I've utilized arts throughout my work my whole time. It's something actually that a lot of people don't realize that we do on the regular is most of our work with young people is utilizing some form of the arts. And when Creative Core came together with this ideal to give, I think, 10 to 12 counties funding to basically tap into their communities in each of their own creative ways so that artists could have an impact in the areas of social justice and equity and utilizing those arts to do it, I was just extremely excited. So, they put this together and allowed different counties. Yolo County was one of them, the city of Davis in particular, and Sacramento County. I also, they're our neighbors. They're like part of our family too. So I'm intimately aware with their efforts too. They were given this money to kind of further test how we could make this happen. And I think the goal and the intention was not to stifle or bind people from the creative ways they might choose to utilize the arts in their communities. So they gave a lot of wiggle room,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe almost just a little too much, a little bit, in all honesty, because I think the intentions were incredible and wonderful, and they have
Mm-hmm.
been, I would say, across the board, including our lovely city. Everyone's trying to do some magnificent things. But in hindsight, if I were looking at hindsight, here are some things I would say I love. I love that they have all these creative artisans out there doing work in their communities, trying to bring people together and create healthy communities. I love to an extent that the artists have their autonomy to do so and they get to come up with a plan to do so and to make this happen. I love it's designed to reach out to different ethnic groups, cultural groups in each of the prospective communities. But in hindsight, one thing that I would probably suggest be done a little differently is that there would be a collective mind share of several sessions of what is social justice, what is systemic change, what are best practices that people can use to utilize the arts in their community. How do those practices match the demographic that they're serving? So, for example, certain things might work with this population A that won't work as well with this population B. And I think for our artisans, some of which had extensive experience and many who did not, it was sort of like having to learn how to be a social justice slash media slash community solidarity building expert pretty quickly. So that's one of the things that I would suggest going forward. I mean, that's actually feedback I've given um, to people that I respect tremendously in this. I think that would have helped. So you can envision all the counties coming together, whether it's via Zoom, whether it's in person, however they wanted to do it. And they would go through at least 3 or 4 sessions before the projects even started. And then they could also do sort of a strength, like an assessment of different counties' strengths and weaknesses and challenges so they could pinpoint what might be some future challenges each prospective project would face. So, for example, maybe one city, they've already been doing this work for a long time. They know what works and what doesn't, so they don't have to do any testing. They already have connections to people in the community that's trying to reach. So they'll be okay. But maybe another city doesn't have that as much, and they're trying to figure out how to do it while they're trying to operate in the grant. So those are two things in hindsight that intuitively, based on my humble observations, would be tremendous for anyone receiving these fundings and the grant monies and so forth, because I actually think it's a lot. I mean, I've spent my whole life doing this work, and it to do it at optimal levels with optimal impact,
Mhm.
you've got to have some foundational understandings. Otherwise, you're still going to have a beautiful impact, but it's going to be way scaled back than what it could have been. And in these times, I know I'm really interested in everyone being able to optimize their giftings and their impact. So um, I love the concept. I hope they continue to fund every county that was involved. I hope they get feedback from every county, and where each county can feel like they can be honest about what their challenges are without worrying that they might not get funding. I think they can, but sometimes counties or recipients of funds are worried about that, so that it can only get stronger and stronger and stronger. Um, because then, I think some people would actually arrange and plan and frame their approaches, honestly, a little differently, so that you don't have people feeling like they have to wear 10 different hats, you know,
Mm.
or having to do so many tasks, they're overwhelmed. I know there was a gentleman who shared his frustration in one of the meetings that we had. I mean, he wasn't being mean or anything, and our gracious hosts were kind enough to open that up for some feedback, and he felt like, he just wanted to be an artist, and he was being asked to do way too many different things. So I love it, but there's always lessons to learn, and that's one core thing that I would change with every project, is that everyone would be required to go through that foundational mind share, best practices, what is change using the arts, and so forth.
So so are you picturing does your feedback mean a mind share with all the different all the different counties, or within
Yes,
each community? Okay,
yes.
like to
So
gather the whole, like get a statewide perspective of what all the different sites are doing and assess the strengths and weaknesses and um,
yeah, so one, essentially, that everyone would go through a series of learning gatherings or gatherings where
mhm,
they are brought up to speed on the latest things we know work. Like I said, best practices. What is so, all those things are defined. How are artists operating based on what we know nationally and beyond, as far as what's being effective and what's not? And um, what is going to optimize their particular approach? What are some things that might help them? So all the counties who receive funding would come to these gatherings, and some of the expertise would come from within those counties, because there's people
mhm,
who have expertise within each of those counties, right? And
yes,
so you
definitely.
wouldn't have to bring outside people. I don't even believe you have to bring in outside, excessively expensive consultants. In each county, I would dare say there's at least one or two or three who've been doing a lot of this work, who have a lot of expertise. But all of the counties collectively would go through that. So, because maybe what I'm thinking is effective as far as utilizing the art is totally something way different than what we know actually to be effective. Maybe what I think is social justice change is way different. And it's
Mhm,
okay to have a mosaic of approaches, but
mhm,
you do want to have successful outcomes. And you don't want to add more difficulty into the process for your participators under those grants. In other words, doing what they need to do is already a lot to do, and you don't want that complicated by them getting stuck because they don't know what to do, or how to make a contact, or who should they speak to, the community that they were assigned to. I think several organizations may have had problems with that. I don't know if they would be honest about sharing that, but it's normal and they shouldn't feel bad. It's just what it is. So that consensus gathering across counties, that that knowledge building across counties would be powerful. And I think 3 or 4 sessions would give them a good start. I mean, they wouldn't learn everything, but they would know some definite don't do's, and they would know best practices, and they would all have those terms defined. It still leaves them the opportunity to develop their individual approaches and so forth, but you would have a better chance for having some systemic impact, you know. Um, and also, another thing is when prospective communities are choosing partners to do outreach in their community, it really does help to survey your community and know who has contacts with those community partners already. That is just that's just a basic thing that everyone should know and do. And I think there's a lot of good faith efforts there, but you save a lot of time on the actual acting out of a grant if you don't have to spend a big chunk of it building trust because you've chosen some of your partners who already have deep connections with the community demographic you're targeting. So I think that's another thing that would be those are things that would be discussed with all of this stuff, you know.
Hmm.
Um, um, yes, but having said that, I'm very proud of what people's intentions were and what they're trying to do. And, some feel extremely successful. Some have felt probably frustrated in the process, and some don't feel successful at all. They feel like, perhaps that they didn't do what they wanted to do. Everyone's going to be different on that.
Mm. Well, with your 30 plus years of experience and from your systems wide point of view, you're seeing possibilities that others haven't seen. And of course, I know that you mean it when you say, of course, you support individual approaches in a mosaic and, diversity in what different groups do.
Yes.
But I love the idea of the kind of cohesive, the networking between the counties is there are a lot of good models for that, of
Well,
working with
um,
to
part
and
of
you'll
part
learn more about each other too.
yeah, part of that collective gathering where you're creating that collective mind share. Um, and I think, often grantors have an ideal of what they're hoping is going to happen, even though they want to leave the details up to the people they give the money to, which I think is empowering. I really
Yeah,
do,
it
because
is.
some grantors are so stifling that you can't, what they're asking you to do is just in the real world, it's just not going to happen, right? I don't think these grantors were that way. They wanted to leave a lot of leeway for people to do substantial things that made a difference. I think probably every county in some way, shape, or form made a difference. So I want to say that are trying their best to make a difference. A person would have to go into each county and deeply assess what were they trying to do and did they do it. But then also that third assessment, okay, yeah, they did what they said they wanted to do, but did it really make an impact? That third assessment has to come from an outside source because
Mhm.
we're going to tend to be happy that we did what we said on that paper. But if you're looking at did it really make an impact and change things, that almost has to be in collaboration with an outside source. Um, and actually, I think it should be preemptive so that they don't waste their time in their grant and then find out, well, those things were great, but they don't really move the needle much. Does that make sense? And so
Mhm.
I think that should be done at the beginning. So, as a part of that sort of cross county mind share knowledge development process, which would depend also from people within those counties. Again, I don't think you need to bring in, $30,000 consultants or whatever. And I'm not saying they did that here. I think you can bring in consultants within each county or people who live in those counties who actually have a lot of experience. And part of those sessions, besides going over general information, can be them sharing their knowledge, right? So all the counties are getting to hear what has worked or not worked, what they have found in the field, not only in research, but in the actual field of doing it. There tends to be a tendency for us to go to default partners.
Mhm.
Um, and and in many cases that's okay because you have a connection with them. But that's also very challenging because those partners cannot be reflective of the communities you're trying to reach, and I think that's problematic. when that is set up like that. You're kind of setting yourself up already when you don't do that. So I really think those pre-sessions, not just about what the grant requires, I think they did that, but those pre-sessions of, okay, everyone's been given their money, everyone is gets to come up with creative ways to do it, and after these 4 sessions, whatever strategies, interventions, programmatic approaches you do are going to be more informed as far as optimizing impact, because you went through these sessions before you even started doing the grant, and you learned some things, or you got to contribute your knowledge to the whole group. So someone said, oh my God, I'm so glad that county was here and said what they said, because we were thinking of doing that, and that would be a disaster based on what they just, So out of that process, people would be a little bit more informed as far as, again, best practices and schematic design. How you're going to design? You got this set amount of time. It's not like you got $1 million. How are you going to optimize that? And I just think that's important. I always love people who step up to the plate and are willing to try and do something. And I think we owe it to people to make sure that they have the assistance they need to be successful as much as possible.
Thank you, Sandy. I hope you're brought in to give this structure and input if as it continues. And to be transparent, I feel very fortunate that I was tapped and have felt like my skills were useful to the local community, and I'm very grateful for the sponsorship.
Yeah, and I'm not specifically talking about Davis either. I'm talking just knowing and hearing discussions, and I've been blessed to have connections because I've been doing this work throughout California and beyond. So I'm not just certainly talking about state, and it doesn't need to be Sandy Lynn Holman. Let me say that too. It doesn't need to be, although I'm always honored to work with my county. I've always offered if they need help. And certainly I have a lot to offer, but there's so many experts, quote unquote. And the term to me is I actually don't call myself an expert. I just call myself a life learning person. And I feel like anyone, as we start to accumulate years of age, we all learn some things. I just have happened to focus on equity and systemic change and social justice most of my life. So I've learned some things, certainly. And of course, I would be happy to work with my own county, but I don't want people to feel like I'm just talking about Davis. The things I'm talking about, I actually shared in one of the sessions across county where people were coming from professional development, that a few things. One, let's find a way to keep this going with all the county, keep the partnerships going with all the people, to take the feedback that you get from all of them. And then, each time you do a cycle of things, there were so many people involved in this, you learn some things, and let's use that to build better should said funding come again. But I did receive calls from people, and again, this isn't particular to just Davis, who were struggling and asking for help and asking for guidance, and really around understanding, how do you do social justice? How do you do social change with the arts? What really works? What is systemic change? Those are good questions. No one has the total answer, but there is some knowledge out there for sure. Now, as far as Davis, I'm not as intimately involved in Davis. I didn't work with their project, so I really could not speak to all that they're doing or have tried or are trying. I couldn't speak to how successful it's been or not. Certainly, I'm always open to be a part of those kinds of things and offer whatever I can offer. But I assume they probably struggled with certain things like some other counties did. All people are going to struggle to a degree. I assume that, but I could be wrong. So I really couldn't speak on the details of. people reached out to me for help or whatever, but I really couldn't speak to the details and nitty gritty of who designed it and how was it designed and what was the rationale behind it. But I think some of the problems that they had or are having, and some of the great successes they've had, is happening the same in other counties. So I assume that all the counties have struggled a little bit in some area, even if it's a different area, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. There's always growth. There's always learning curves. We're all learning on different learning curves.
Exactly. And
But
I assume there's a lot of successes too that they're proud of, a lot of things to point to, a lot of wonderful. I did go to a showcase here in Davis that was beautiful, that they did at the Veterans Memorial. It was a showcase of, you know, um, Sacramento artists, Yolo County artists. It was really quite beautiful. So there's successes and things to learn. Um, but yes, if they go forward, I do hope to be more involved. I will say that I do hope to be more involved, and to share any knowledge that I have that can help them. I think other organizations too, um, that have roots here, come to mind, and I don't know if they were deeply involved or not. I think the Phoenix Coalition would be another group. I mean, they have a wealth of experience
definitely.
in doing this kind of work, and do a variety of things where the arts are involved. I mean, there's even organizations like um, Sahaya Walks. I apologize about that. Sahaya Walks. I mean, I don't know the whole list of partners who are involved, but I do know some who weren't involved, that seemed like they would have been good choices. But you only have so much time and so much funding and all of that. So I get that too. So I really do.
Well, I certainly would love to use any means I can to have your expertise. I do call you an expert. Hope you don't mind. I
You're
just have
fine.
seen your wisdom and your arts and your service, and the Phoenix Coalition is also awesome. And I think this the first year is a growing year, and they're not done yet. And you're making me realize it'd be really good to have like a recap after this first year is over. But I know there's some more good stuff coming up, including another art share with. So I want to make sure we have time for people to hear about how you have used art. I mean, you're an author. Your books are just beautiful and powerful. You a documentarian. You're right. I mean, I guess I could ask, like, is there a medium that speaks to you more for expressing and moving systems change forward, or all of them? You're so
Well,
multi-talented.
um, again, one of the reasons why I'm so excited about what everyone's trying to do across I can't remember, excuse me, if it's 10 or 12 counties, is because I know from personal experience and also collaborative experiences, the arts are powerful and transformative. And as part of a whole approach where you have knowledge development and educational enrichment, and intertwine that with the utilization of the various different art formats, and it builds upon each other. In other words, things aren't working in isolation. This builds into the next thing, into the next thing. And then, of course, you have some isolated events and showcases and, you know, projects also. You can have an incredible impact. So, in the Culture Co op and United in Unity, and we haven't talked about this so much. Most of my work with young people utilizes the arts. We use music because music is powerful. The research around that is clear. I use music, and I would say 90% of my presentations, whether it was with youth or adults, there's going to be some music at some part of it. We used dance because dance is powerful too. You're kinetically using the body and the mind. And then with music, you're layering on top of that so it sinks into the memory and the brain memory more to have a deeper emotional, I would say spiritual, soulful impact. We use dramatic arts. So we had the Sankofa play. Most people don't know we did this play that was in Davis. It was sponsored by the city of Davis, which was just wonderful. Rachel and the city of Davis, they were just so kind to Bike City Theater and the Culture Co-op. And we were able to provide 6 shows of that in Yolo County. I think in total, we probably had about 1,000 who came to that play. But that play was actually addressing internalized oppression. And when you're talking about systemic approaches, you want to address external factors like supremacy ideology and the impact it has on inequity in all our institutions. But then you also want to address the people it's targeted and affected. And so many people of color or vulnerable groups or women, they have issues in how they see themselves because they internalize the oppressive messages that are sent to them through media and all that. So we had this play Sankofa, which addressed internalized oppression. And boy, after just one showing, we had kids coming up to us at the Veteran Memorial at the stage, mothers standing by them in tears, and the kids were saying, I'm proud to have dark skin, or I'm proud to be
Mhm.
black, or I'm
Mm.
proud to be brown, or whatever their thing is. um, we use books, obviously. Writing is one of the dramatic art forms that sometimes does not get its due, and it is powerful. So all of our books, you mentioned a few of them. We're actually working on right now a book pack, books for a just, peaceful, and loving world, and they're really
Mm.
books for adults across generations. Even though they're written to look like children's books, the messages are germane to anyone, and they're powerful. We've read some of those stories, we've tested it. We're looking for funding because I want to be able to give these book packs away in a time when they're banning books like mine, in a
Mm.
time when we're banning books that help kids get along, help kids appreciate differences, help kids fight hate, promote love. I want to be able to give these book packs. I have a dream. I was sharing, I think with, it may have been Rachel. I've shared it with Garth Lewis at YCOE. I would like to see those book packs and the presentations that we do in schools, which are assemblies that combine music, dance, the arts, books, all of it, and where all of our schools get that at least one presentation to lay the seed for springing into other things. I would love to find funding for that to happen because we did several of those in the Sacramento area, and they were just absolutely powerful in their impact. So, those are just a few ways. We have a book of reflections. It's actually more like a booklet of reflections, and I'm going to make a lot of these things available for free. I want to find sponsors who will support this because when you get to the point that I am in my life, you just want people to be blessed by these things and not hindered, excuse me, either because they don't have funds or whatever. So I am going to be actively looking for sponsors uh, to support so I can go to all of our elementary schools, junior high, and say, hey, here's our anti-blackness guide. Here's our book pack for a loving, just, equitable world. Here's our 7 ways to promote systemic change that we know work. And just give them these
Mm.
things, and also be available with our partners because I work with partners for those who really want it, and it really brings all of that alive. To go to all the schools, like um, and do these presentations as a sort of kickoff to get people excited because we're living in a time where the words equity, CRT, diversity, even those are being um, weaponized in bad ways as if they're bad things to be. You're aware of that. I just think that um, again, knowing the research about those different forms that I just mentioned, singing, all of that. We use all of that. So I couldn't have done most of the work that I've done with young people, because young people aren't going to just sit there and let you talk at them and share. And adults, I would say, they're really not going to let you do that either. I mean, we're already competing against cell phones and computers and half paying attention because people have so much on them. But when you bring in the arts, it captures people attentions. And then when you know how to use them strategically, building upon each other, connecting them, layering them, and combining them with constructs, policies, and practices that promote systemic change, you're talking about my favorite word, transformation.
Mm.
And so that's what we've done for quite a while and are still doing. Like many organizations, the challenge is always raising funds to support our work. I am going to be going full hardy on that because I want my county. I also consider Sacramento a part of our family, Northern California, Sacramento County, and then of course offering it to people across the country who want this. So those are some of the ways that we have used the arts. We're actually right now working on the second iteration of the Sankofa play. It won't be the full scale production we did last time, but we're adding music to it because we
Mm.
know that kids sync with music even more. And so uh, JR and I are going to be working on that. We're looking for money to support that. But I don't think anything is as powerful um, without using the arts. That's why I was really excited about this grant. I was really
Mm.
excited about this grant because the research is clear. And at the national level, they're looking for evidence to show that it works. And I believe that it does work. It does make a difference. And especially when they help to design it for all the people receiving the grants to have the opportunity to be optimal in their impact. In other words, they give them that helpful structure based on the national and even international research that's been done.
Wow, I got to see the Sankofa play, and I think a couple of iterations, and I would love to come back and see music brought into it.
Yeah,
And I,
the next level will probably be actually a reading, just a reading, but with music infused in it. And that's often the way these kinds of things have to work because of funding and all of that. But I was really happy we videotaped the first one. We're in the process of editing it, and we'll be able to make that available to people across the country and beyond. So I'm excited. And of course, the other art form is documentaries. I think the documentary we did is one of the most powerful tools when you combine it with everything else. So a lot of people have just seen the documentary, but they haven't done the whole paradigm for transforming individuals, communities, systems, and beyond, which is systemically designed. So a lot of people just saw the documentary thinking, okay, I'm supposed to change, or okay, is that it? But they didn't do the whole approach. So
like
I'm
you
a
had 4 weeks, right? 4 weeks of like community dialogue after watching the documentary.
no, actually, it's a year-long process.
Oh,
It is a year-long process because you're doing ongoing, what I call equity encounter gatherings, where you're developing that foundational mind share at deeper ways and deeper levels. It's really designed for people who are really serious about systemic change because these one-shot things that we do, which are beautiful, inviting one-shot speakers, one-shot this, they're all beautiful and it's better than nothing, but they will not long-term move the needle. Systemic change takes a minimum of 3 years. I know most people aren't going to commit to that. And that's if everything's ideal, which we know they're not. People come and go, people have different philosophies. You move 10 steps forward and 20 steps back because of some change, all kinds of things. So, really, it takes longer, but you can start to see. That's why that good design is even more important to hit the ground running. You can start to see some impact, I think, within a year time, even though it's not going to accomplish everything that you want. You can make some headway for sure. People are burned out. What I've noticed is people are burned out. DEI, critical race theory, and all that is not in vogue, quote unquote, because of louder voices that have been really effective at dismantling it, where people are even afraid to say the words, even some of our allies, because that's the current environment we're living in. Of course, I'm saying those words even more because I refuse to succumb to that. But a vast majority of my colleagues, and I mean well meaning people, they don't want to use the words. And so it's a very interesting time, Bahia. We have to even more so get our acts together at a time when most of us are experiencing extreme burnout, and understandably. Um, you know, grants require a lot of work. And that's one thing I think that grantors could also do is design things in such a way where they trust the communities that they're giving funds to. So you don't have to do so much paperwork that it takes 25% of your time. Or, and again, I'm not even just talking about this grant. This is grants in general, some of the problems that have been shared with organizations, the paperwork, the evaluation requirements, all of that, which take a lot of time from the actual frontline work. Of course, there should be some accountability, but they take it to the extreme. And also this practice of giving huge sums of monies to municipalities who have not proven that they have a track record in being efficient in these areas. So college campuses, institutions, they'll get large amounts of money, and oftentimes that goes into a research paper that sits on someone's shelf that has had little impact on the community. Not all the time, but oftentimes. These are things I really struggle with at a time when things are needed. I do think funds need to be given more to the community members themselves, who and I mean community members who live in those communities, who understand those problems, who are going to be given access to some training and research that, hey, this is like we were talking earlier. They should be getting a lot more money than municipalities. Municipalities certainly play a key role, but they should not be the fund holders, if unless they have a proven track record of doing actual work that has made a difference, are showing that they're trying to make a difference. Um, it's a problematic design still, and I'm thinking nationally. This is nationally. I've sat on grant committees and all of that. It's a problem. It's a problem. Those are some of the complaints. The paperwork involved, the valuation involved, the time consuming aspects of it, having to jump through all these hoops. I mean, it's just, you know, talk to people who receive grants, even some of the smaller ones. So those are things that grantors need to tighten up and do better on, particularly given huge sums of money to what they call legitimate institutions, and that money is not trickling down to the communities beyond a survey of tell us more information about who you are that they never see the end result of. I think those practices need to go away, honestly.
Well, I would like to believe that this particular California Creative Corps grant is laying a really good foundation, a strong foundation that will continue. And it does take so much like persistence and commitment and broadening, like expanding the sphere of inclusion, tapping more and more on local expertise, people who haven't been seen yet.
Yeah. And one thing that
So
they did do
I
that I
feel
loved, I think in the Creative Core grant, that was lovely. I think they did require some percentage had to go directly to artists. I thought that was a good thing. It had to go some percentage, I can't remember, some percentage of the grant did have to go directly to artists. And so that is a beautiful start. That is.
yeah.
I'm
And you're
hoping that,
really go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I am encouraged to do to share more about what has been done. And your critique is extremely helpful. And I wish the nation could hire you.
You know, I'm actually, that's very kind of you to say. And I actually don't see it as a critique as much as an observation of learning. Like, um, in the work that I do, I am always making observations. Sandy, this ain't doing nothing special. It feels good. And hey, there's a time to feel good, but this isn't moving the needle. These are observations I will
Oh
make,
yeah. Oh yeah.
so,
And then,
it's just observations that I've made over the years, um, in this work, and opportunities for us to learn and to share, so we don't keep doing the same things generation after generation. People are often afraid to offend certain people because it means you may not get money or chosen to work with or be seen as a trouble rouser. And I really don't think, it should be viewed that way in the cases where they may view it that way. So a lot of people don't share their honesty and their truth, and we don't grow. We keep making mistakes. And, when we do that, I don't really want to do that at this point. There's too much. There's
yeah.
too
And
much.
and I I,
Yeah,
I didn't mean, I don't think critiques are negative. I think they're constructive.
yeah.
I think it's constructive feedback is what I meant. And
My elders give me some of the toughest critiques, and I consider them experts in their perspective field. I wish people could hear the things they say to me. What were you thinking? Did you really think that was going to make a difference? Who were you doing that for? I mean, and it's sometimes it's like, oh, ouch, each, but I always learn from it, and it's made me improve, and it's made me be more real and honest with myself, and it's made me be able to get to the point where, for the most part, I can go into a situation and I can hear the discussion and communication and happening in that space. And if someone said, Sandy, you have to put this on a scale of 1 to 20, where these people are at in their growth when it comes to equity, true equity, and systemic change, I would be able to assess that rather quickly because of those observations, my
Mhm.
own growth lessons, my focus and study in this area. And it wouldn't be to be judgmental, it would just be able to be used as tools to say, okay, with this group, we need to start here and get them really quickly up to here because they think they're here, but they're really way down here. You understand what I'm saying? And you do
feedback.
it all,
Yep.
yeah, you do it all with love. Um, you do it all with, the understanding that because we are all burned out to a degree, are really dealing with a lot, and people are afraid about what's coming, what's going to happen in the future, that we want to actually streamline as much as possible. So, like, how beautiful would it be if you come into, say, a new Grant C, you come into Grant C, and they've gone through those pre-gatherings and all those kinds of things across the country. They're giving every county a
Yeah.
certain amount of
So
money. Everyone's gone through this,
wonderful.
this pre, and so as a result of coming out of that, people say, okay, we're going to really actually specialize more. There's going to be our octopus hub head that is the center of information for all the tentacles. But this tentacle, they're going to do anything related to this particular thing. This tentacle is good because this is so that people don't have to feel like
Yeah.
they got to do 1,000 different, but they're going to be
Yeah.
all put together into that octopus head to check in, to get guidance, to get information. You know, I
I
mean,
love your vision. I need to say we have only 1 minute left, and I want to give you a chance to say your closing thought. The
My
time's
closing
flown
my
by.
closing thoughts are that I hope that, as far as the Creative Core Grant is concerned, that everyone gets more funding. I hope the lessons learned and suggestions given are implemented so it can even be better. And yes, utilize the arts combined with knowledge and education, historically speaking, especially to go out there and transform people. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I love every conversation I have with you, and love your feedback, and
You're
so
welcome.
appreciate you.
You're welcome.
And And I want to thank Rebel, our engineer, and our producer, Dean Piper, and all of our listeners and viewers, and the California Creative Corps. And I think we have a credit slide to put up. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on w4cy.com or Talk4TV. And may we all have enriching conversations in diversity this week.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate